Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, I see a lot of nods. Wonderful. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me at this Thursday's Numen Lumen. My name is Laura Arroyo. I see a lot of faces I know, some faces I don't. I work in residence life. I thank the Truett Center staff, but especially Diana. Where is she? There she is in the back. Diana, for asking me to be here today. Actually, I'm not sure that saying thank you is the best words I would use to describe Diana's request of me today. Some of us that have been asked, I think, can agree that our body is saying no, and suddenly our face and our mouth is saying yes, and we're not quite sure how or why, but that's the power of Diana. So I've been asked to speak on this year's theme of the company we keep, stories of welcoming and hospitality in our community. Interesting that today's conversation should bring me such anxiety. We use the phrases speak your truth, not be afraid to be real, all of these things we ask of our students at Elon. I know I ask of them regularly to do this. But how often do we truly bare our soul, our flaws, our mistakes, for others to see? I suppose I said yes because it seems so hypocritical of me not to be willing to speak my truth or to be real with those at Elon that I ask this of myself. So the company we keep. I think it's best if I speak about what I should know best, which is myself, my journey, my story. I start us with a quote from Max Ehrman. Go placidly amid the noise and the haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others, even the dull and ignorant, they too have their story. Be yourself. Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here. And whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore, be at peace with God, whatever you conceive him to be, and whatever your labors and aspirations, in the noisy confusion of life, keep peace with your soul. With all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. I am a humanist, not in the sciencey way that I think most people understand humanism, more in the appreciation of humankind type of way. The idea that within each of us rests someone of value and purpose and meaning. That is our due north. Within us is our own compass. I started my journey raised in many ways a space similar to the town of Burlington or Elon, in a small town, rural conservative America, in a blue-collar Baptist home and church. It is hard for me not to remember a time when the church was a part of my life. I literally think I came out of the womb singing, and I remember one of my earliest memories standing in front of a church such as this at the tender age of 5, singing a solo. My church was in many ways my moral compass, my pastor was my guide, and my faith in God was my constant. My pastor, though I didn't understand it at the time, was pivotal to my growth as a woman. Pastor Marjorie greatly impacted my journey. I didn't recognize how rare it was at the time to have a female pastor. The church is in many ways my earliest identity. Baptized at 13, Sunday Bible school, Wednesday choir practice, this was my upbringing. However, when I became an adolescent, that all changed. Pastor Marjorie retired. We had no pastor. Our church was going through a bit of an identity crisis, and in fact, so was I. I realized that I was inside, as my father would say, a bloody liberal. I grew out my hair, I questionably showered, I became obstinate at best, and I questioned everything and everyone around me. And I was bi. This is maybe not something I knew in my front brain, but it was something that I felt and I knew deeply and profoundly and without question. And it was about to come into direct conflict with my understanding of God and with the church. For those of you familiar with the Baptist faith, often churches are given pastors for a short period of time until a more permanent replacement can be found. Well, the church had decided on one, a hellfire and brimstone minister from the great state of Mississippi. I say this because that is the way he described himself, from being from the great state of Mississippi. During his first sermon, he managed to offend every screaming liberal part of me. I remember snippets of the sermon. I honestly think my disbelief and anger blocks the memory just quite a bit. But I remember distinctly being told that homosexuality was wrong and that it was an abomination from God. This may seem strange, but up until that moment, I don't believe I had reasoned out how my faith and my sexuality might come into question. Pastor Marjorie created a very welcoming church. The pulpit had not been used for anything other than the praise in the Lord. The true bloody liberal I am, this internal fury culminated, and in the midst of a sermon, I just walked out. And I never looked back. I quite literally walked out on my church, my religion, my belief system, and my due north was gone from my life. The years that followed were a hazy time of bad choices, anger, loss, and loneliness. I felt alone from God, alone without my faith, and alone in my sexuality. I ran away, I experimented with drugs, I felt and was indeed homeless. It is interesting, though. In the hardest moments come opportunities, come beauty, and come strength. While I may not have known it at the time, I was living my belief system. I was living my ideas around humanism and the beauty of resiliency that only comes through hardship. After graduating, I went on to college, the first of my family. And ultimately, higher education saved me for the first time. More times were to follow. In my fall semester, I received a newspaper clipping from my mother announcing the arrest and sentencing of my close friends for multiple drug violations. This was a jolt to my soul. Had I not gone to college, I without doubt would have been involved. When I consider our topic today, the company we keep, stories of welcoming and hospitality in our community, it is quite literally the college community which helped create purpose again in my life. It gave me back a due north that I was missing and yearning for. And I became a social worker and found purpose again, purpose in helping others, purpose in the belief that perfection is non-existent, that it's the challenge and strife in life and the resiliency that we show which truly makes us complex, beautiful humans. I got clean. I threw myself into my career. I worked in drug and alcohol treatment and with delinquent and dependent youth. After a number of years working in the social work field, I made the decision to pursue my master's degree, also still the first in my family. And then higher education, and specifically residence life, saved me once again, and ultimately helped me find my forever home, my community, and my greatest life's purpose. In my first year of graduate school, while working as an AD in Hart Hall, I mention this because it's a little ironic that the place that I was working, this first space, was called Hart Hall. And after I've told you about my belief system in humanism, isn't that irony for it at its best? In my first year working within Hart Hall, 3 of my students were involved in a quite horrific car crash. It was over fall break, and many of the university administrators were also away from campus, also on break. I remember the specific moment when the director of residence life called me and asked that I go to the hospital to meet the 3 families on behalf of the university. When I arrived, it became clear that 2 of the 3 students may not make it out of surgery, and one, my hall government president, who I advised closely, was unlikely to survive. Mom arrived with only the social worker. The doctors had been attempting to stabilize for surgery to decrease the swelling on his brain, but they were having little success. As I held the mom's hand, the doctor exited the room and informed us that Mom needed to go in, that it was unlikely they would be able to stabilize him at that point. Mom froze. She just couldn't do it. She couldn't face it. She couldn't say goodbye. She asked me to go in and be with her son for her. It's strange. I think back to that moment and I wonder why I didn't pause, why I didn't refuse. But I entered the room, and as I stood next to the bed looking at this young man, unrecognizable from his trauma, I held his right hand and I prayed. But I prayed to him as a human. The social worker and I created a mantra over and over, asking him to fight, to push through, to give it one last try. His heart stopped on the table multiple times. It's hazy for me. I honestly don't remember how many times. But we recited our mantra and we prayed, and as the doctors pushed epi, he stabilized. Here's the thing. Sometimes life forces us to wake up. In that moment, I woke up. I knew that higher education, residence life, was my greater purpose. It was my community. How pivotal one moment of life can really be. How quickly can the course of a life be altered? How beautiful is humankind, and how cold is the idea of death? These are the emotions I grappled with in a matter of minutes. So what happened to the student? He fought through the night, but the brain surgery appeared inconclusive. He was given a 15% chance to survive, and there was no brain activity. He was in a coma. This coma lasted for about 3 weeks. Each day we visited the hospital and we talked with him and his mom, and 3 weeks later there was still no brain activity. And then one day he awoke, and the next day he got up, and by the third day he was walking. All 3 students survived, and all 3 returned to Hart Hall the next semester. This student's recovery, while certainly meaningful in my life, was really the tipping point for my faith's journey. Religion, spirituality, it's an interesting thing in one's life. It causes purpose, strife, pain, hope. But this moment allowed me to get right with myself, to gain truth that it's okay to be spiritual, that everyone's faith journey is an individual process. Right now, I believe in humankind. I believe in humanism. I believe that each of us have an untapped strength and resiliency that will rise up at the unlikeliest of moments, but that it's not a fixed target. I think back on Adam and Eve and the idea of sin being created in humankind, and I believe if there is a God, they knew that Eve would be tempted and that this was the goal, because our greatest flaws and mistakes in our lives are largely followed by moments of greatness. In short, it is our mistakes that make us interesting, beautiful humans. To answer the original question of the company we keep, stories of welcoming and hospitality in our community, I say without question that it's this community which keeps me whole, loved, and fulfilled. Residence life, the people I work with, the colleagues whom I consider my friends and my family, the human aspect of what we do in this work, that is what drives me, and that's what keeps me grounded. I leave you with a quote from Mary Mannon Morrissey. Even though you may want to move forward in your life, you may have one foot on the brakes. In order to be free, we must learn how to let go, release the hurt, release the fear, refuse to entertain your old pain. The energy it takes to hang on to the past is holding you back from a new life. What is it you would let go of today? Thank you all for attending and for listening. It's a sunshiny day, isn't it? It's so beautiful out. I appreciate you all very much in my life, and long live Elon.